Hey everyone, and thanks for joining. We're still a little bit early. I know we're kind of starting to fill up a little bit here. So just wanted to take a moment to thank you guys for joining. You can sit back, take a breather, fill up your coffee, whatever that might be. We'll be getting started here in about 2 or 3 minutes. So thanks again for joining and talk to you in about 2 or 3 minutes. Thanks. Hey everyone, and thank you for joining. I know some of you guys are already in here. I just want to take one more moment as we're still kind of filling up. We'll probably just take another minute or two before we get started here. But thank you so much for joining, and we will get started here in about just about a minute. All righty, so we will get started. I know we're still having some people pop in here, but we're slowing down here. So we'll just get started here right about now and go from there. So thank you so much for all of you in attendance for taking the time either during your lunch hour prior to wherever you might be at in the country, but certainly appreciate you taking a moment to learn a little bit more about Safety HQ as well as some ways that we can improve our safety practices. My name is Eric Tardy. I'm with Safety HQ. I can pull up that slide here in a second for you, but I should already have the Safety HQ platform up for us to kind of work off of. I think that's a good place for us to start in a lot of this, and a lot of what we're going to be discussing is because obviously I'm from Safety HQ. That's our biggest platform, but it's also going to kind of consolidate and bring home the 2 points that we kind of always talk the most about when it comes down to ensuring that you have a safety culture and improving your safety culture. I see the reason, and I'll kind of back into this a little bit, but Safety HQ is an extremely customizable solution. For those of you that are not aware, it's a software platform available on iPhone, Android, tablet, what have you. You can use it on your laptop, like I'll be showing you today. But the goal here is to show you kind of some options and what I see, and just some expectations of what we see in the industry. And I think that starts first and foremost with the fact that we see a lot of different things all over, whether it be from trade to trade, from part of the country to part of the country, depending if you're a general contractor or a specialty or a sub or something along those lines. What's different about safety than all of our other offerings, whether it be payroll or what have you, is the customization and is the changes that we see in each and every in each and every industry, each and every company that we work for. So that's one of the things that we focus on when it comes to SafetyHQ, is giving you the ability to customize to meet your needs, right? Now we'll talk about some best practices and so forth. And there are some things that each and every company and client that we work with, have worked with, what have you, all kind of have in common. But again, the kind of the backbone of SafetyHQ is we need to make this flexible and customizable, because we realize everybody has those different needs, wants, and structures to their safety programs. I think a good place to get started is, how do you organize your safety program, right? I think that's something that we all probably need to look and review. If this is something that, if you really say and believe that you prioritize safety within your business, does that show? Do you have a dedicated safety rep, right? Do you have somebody whose job it is to focus on safety full time? Is this just kind of a partial task that you have multiple people doing? All of those can work, but I think the most important thing that we focus on at the end of the day is, are you following up in what you're doing from a safety perspective? Does it count? Is it tracked? Is it managed, right? Because you can say it's important, you can give the lip service, and you can have everyone doing it in pieces and parts, but if they know that, you know, you're never going to review that JHA or those toolbox talk attendance records, or you're never going to check to see if they do these items, ultimately you're not going to get the participation and the safety culture that you're looking to establish. Even though you're saying it, even though you develop it, even though you might have an incentive program, I think the start is having all of those items easily accessible and reviewable for your team, to make sure that you know that they know you're paying attention and that you're following up, and that we do actually want to prioritize these items out in the field. So again, having the ability to review and access those all items, there's a number of ways you can do it. I've seen some people do it through paper, do it through email, Excel, what have you. I'm biased. I'm going to say SafetyHQ is one of, if not the best options for you there, because safety needs to be convenient and accessible, right? If this is going to slow down your team's production tasks on a day-to-day basis, that's not going to help produce a safety culture. If they have to go through 3 different places and it's a real hassle, that's not going to help produce participation and follow through. So again, SafetyHQ focusing on bringing all those things into one place and simplifying the process as a whole. So I think one good place to start is, and there's plenty of items, for those of you that want to get into more information, I'll put up my contact information at the end. SafetyHQ integrates with your accounting or payroll options, so we can simplify a lot of the dual uploads as far as job information, employee information, and equipment information. But I think what we really want to talk today more so is about like features and what we can do from an improvement standpoint as we go. So I always like to start with toolbox talks. Again, for those of you that are already familiar with SafetyHQ, you can tell I'm in the web version. We can get down to a mobile version here. You'll see it's going to look very similar as we go, but that's the first step, right? Is we want to make this accessible to our teams regardless of where they're at. In the case of SafetyHQ, we have the ability to do things like select toolbox talks in any language. We can assign those out to the team. So we have the flexibility to say, hey, I want certain folks to review this at a date and time that I select. So I don't know, we'll go ahead and pick next week. I don't know, maybe the end of the month. We'll make it fun here. If for those of you that are doing this via email, via paper, what have you, it might be really difficult to track what you've sent out to the team, who has what topics they've reviewed already. This also makes the ability to stay relevant a lot easier, right? So if you have a near miss on your site, if you have something that came up frequently, maybe it is an accident or an incident, the ability to send out relevant information in a timely manner is critical. So you'll see your team can get notifications of a new toolbox talks. We have notifications for certifications expiring, incidents and accidents, all of those types of items. So being in the loop, handling those routing and management tools are going to be crucial so that your team can be up to date as far as what's most important. If the scope of a job changes and you need to update, a JHA or update the team on some additional hazards through maybe a toolbox talk that they haven't reviewed recently, this is a great way to do so. So whatever tool you're using, or if you're not using a tool, just make sure that you can stay timely, up to date, because those are the most relevant. That's what's going to get your team's buy-in, and that's what's going to get those ears perked up to get them paying attention. When they're reviewing these items as you go. But SafetyHQ's got about 200 toolbox talks that we can share. As I showed you in an example, we can share this. Here's like the inbox, my notifications of the toolbox talks that I've been assigned. Hit my easy to find, easy to use, built for construction fingers yellow button here. I select it. Great. I can select a project that I'm working off of. Again, ideally with an integration for those of you out there, depending on what tools you're using. And we can go ahead and collect those signatures after, of course, I've reviewed the toolbox talk with the team. We can select those digitally, right? So automatically we have a nice strong record of who's in attendance. We have signatures selecting all of those folks as we go. I'm getting some kind of goofy signatures here. That's right on the device, whatever they're using out in the field already, whether that's their phone or tablet or what have you. They hit submit and they don't have to worry about it. That's key as well too, right? We don't want to be hunting these down from, the floorboards of your employees' trucks, what have you. I would say if you're not going to use SafetyHQ, this is probably the biggest linchpin or point of failure for a lot of solutions. So if you don't use these, I would suggest prioritizing this as a way. If you're looking to improve your processes, it's not the content, it's not this, it's not that. It's the submission process. Make sure you can get those done relatively quickly. In this case, I hit submit. We can review that toolbox talk automatically. We can review photos of it. Now we can review a nice PDF of that over here. This can have my name, company logo, all that kind of stuff on it as well. And then we can share this off with whoever might need to review it too, right? So if I need to go in here and say, hey, I need all the toolbox talks for this particular project for this particular date range, easy to grab that, and we can go ahead and grab those nice PDF copies to share with whoever might want to review it. Or maybe there's an incident that occurs and we want to see all the toolbox talks related to the topic that we had the failure on. So having this information readily accessible is key, especially if you run into any kind of OSHA hazards, if you're bidding a new job, what have you. Showing potentially your general contractor, the owner, OSHA, whoever might be that want to see this information, that you are prepared, you have this information well organized, and you can provide it at any time. It goes certainly a very long way. We also do a lot of things in the background too, so you can see what employees have attended what toolbox talks, however you want to do that. On your side, if you're not using a solution like that, make sure you have something in place to regularly track who's attended toolbox talks and, more importantly, what they've attended. This will come up, I know we have some new companies on here based on the feedback we've gotten. This will come up pretty frequently, especially if you get into an issue in which an employee is involved in an incident, near miss, or accident. You can pull up those toolbox talks related to that topic. If they had a fall, you can pull up a slip, trips, falls, or whatever toolbox talk that they attended, to protect yourself and your business as well. But this is the big key, right? This is what I was kind of showing you guys as a whole. This is one of, if not the biggest parts of establishing a safety culture. It's the follow through, right? You can bark all you want, but if there's no bite and there's no follow through, the team's really not going to follow through either. SafetyHQ's way of doing that is providing this toolbox talk reporting. We can set up rules to review employees, their attendance. In this case, I'm going to set this up for like foremen or administrators. I want to see, how many toolbox talks they've put out in the last week. This week I've already done mine. I can see the date and time. That's great. But more importantly, I can go ahead and notify anyone who has not completed their task yet as well too. So right from here, I can notify my entire team, remind them that they need to get their toolbox talk completed. They've already gotten a notification once they were assigned that toolbox talk at the date and time that you've selected. And then from here, you can also allow them to select their own. So this is a good reminder if people are picking their own topics each week with their crew. Maybe you don't know what they're discussing, but they haven't discussed anything yet. A good time to remind them and tell them that they need to get that completed. So Send notifications from here, route through managers, what have you. You can also see, submission graphs, things like that. If you want to do an incentive program, you can say we're only in the first week of the year, but so far I'm off to a good start. So that's important too. I see that go 50-50, right? From client to client. Hey, how well does an incentive program work? Eric, do you recommend it? What do you see your other clients do? I think it's great, right? I think an incentive program is a fantastic way to get people to participate. I otherwise see people that, just show the buy-in and create the value in that we care about all of our employees. This is important. This is non-negotiable. Before you're getting your pay stubs, we want to make sure we see all of your safety information for that site or what have you too. So there's a lot of ways you can do it, whether it's building it through an incentive program, whether it's building it through, maybe a harder line approach, whatever it is, as long as you're following through and making sure that the teams are accountable and doing these safety items, that's step one in building a strong safety culture, in my opinion, for sure. Outside of Toolbox Talk, SafetyHQ has a whole bunch of items, and this is where we're kind of going to go in a couple of different directions depending on your focus, your trade, what have you. But SafetyHQ in particular has customizable forms, so we can customize this based on your needs, the forms that you guys might be working off of already, maybe a form that you're required to fill out by I don't know, a particular general contractor, owner, what have you. We can customize to meet and match all of those. But the important thing that I want to point out in these forms, again, the details aren't going to be super critical here because we're going to get into some details one after the other. In order to get teams to follow through and focus on forms appropriately, it's important to only show them the relevant details. So whether that means you build out more forms because you're using a paper solution, or whether that means you decide on a solution like SafetyHQ, we don't want to overwhelm them with information. There's two ways that can happen. One is you give them too many options on a form. They're filling out a ton of different selections. They get stressed out. They don't know what to do, and they don't know what to skip, what's important, what's not important. The alternative is you don't give them enough information. You have to have them write down a lot of information. It's not very well organized in that sense that, it's a big paragraph. You can't take data points out of that. You can't focus on particular needs. And the employee is going to be overwhelmed, pencil whip that thing, and you're not going to get the information or the focus from your employees or your crews that you might prefer. So the approach we take at SafetyHQ is we really only want to show them the appropriate and relevant information, right? In this case, we're doing a setup of a job, maybe some demolition on the site. Once I hit next, it's only going to show me the related hazard types, right? And I use a lot of the same examples here. So if you've seen this, you may see these familiar, but we're worried about maybe fall protection and environmental hazards today. We're only going to see fall protection hazards, environmental hazards, and on the next page, only the controls and mitigations related to those hazards that we've selected. So it's keeping the team focused. It's making them think about what they're inputting. It's keeping them focused on the safety piece. You're getting good information submitted. You're getting good information at the end of the day, and you're getting relevant buy-in, attention, and focus on these safety tasks as you continue as well too, because you're not overloading them with a whole bunch of things that they don't need. From there, we have some other tools, maybe not as generic to a safety program as a whole, but more specific to SafetyHQ. We can take photos and mark them up. I see that a lot on daily reports, JHAs, what have you, maybe inspections. I see that quite a bit as well. You can collect signatures. Is going to work a lot like the other areas of SafetyHQ. Again, that's a focus. We want this to be simple and easy to use. If you know how to use some aspects in one area, you know how to do it everywhere. And that goes with, searching for submitted documents. If I want to print this out in a PDF, it's going to look a lot like the customizable one that I showed you before. And then from a follow-up perspective, we have the same tools here as well too. So we can check and review who's completing what and when. The next area that I'd like to focus on, and one of the ways that I'll do it would be through the safety evaluation or this inspection, is follow through and actionable items, right? For those of you that are out there that maybe have had some OSHA fines or issues like that, the worst thing that you can do is document a problem, concern, deficiency, what have you, and not follow up on it. That's worst case scenario. So you need to find, well, and it, number two from that would be not documenting it, not paying attention at all. But that's where a lot of teams I notice fall short as well too, right? So you could be really good at documenting it and noticing those issues, but the follow-up can often be really confusing. You want to get on to other tasks. How do you set up the chain of communication, what have you? Again, SafetyHQ's got a pretty nice and convenient way for you to do so. But if you're doing things on paper, if you're doing things through email, what have you, establishing that order of communications that's easy to follow for the team under all circumstances is probably the second most important thing you can do. So, if I'm going through a job site, in this case, I use this example because it's the third one down and it's pretty universal. The first aid kit is not on the site or it's not well stocked. We can automatically document and we can manage this. So this will be for our record keeping, our data analysis later. And then also we can route this to the people that we need. So right away, James might be the one addressing this, this first aid kit not being on the site. Maybe Brent's a project manager or something along those lines. We can automatically and inline document the issue, assign it to who needs to review it. In this case, I want to give it a due date as well. Say we need this by tomorrow. Great. And I can continue on with the tasks that I need to perform. You can see this is turned to green now. The employees that need to be notified can and automatically will be notified. If you don't want to go through the whole details of a corrective action, we can also set up automatic email alerts from there. Now, one thing SafetyHQ can do, but we don't recommend, we don't often do, is send off automatic notifications anytime like a form is completed, right? If you talk us into it, we can certainly do that. But notifications of completed items, so I see this a lot for folks that set up kind of homemade systems based through email, Excel, some other areas like that. If you get a notification every time a form is completed, you are going to ignore all of the critical items and notifications that you need to pay attention to. So that's why in this case, SafetyHQ, we're only sending out notifications when an item needs action, or maybe based on certain triggers that we have on these forms. Again, we could do it the other way if you want, but that's one of the big issues and points of failures that we see for folks that are using solutions outside of SafetyHQ, is that you have a notification for everything. If you get an email notification for every JHA that gets completed by all your project managers, you're gonna get a bunch of them a day, you're gonna ignore them all, especially if you're doing them by task, and you're not going to be able to focus on the critical items that need your attention or that your team needs to put attention on. One of the ways that we avoid kind of that overload of information is this corrective actions area in SafetyHQ. This is a really nice task review area. So you can go ahead, see all of the items assigned to a particular employee. We can default these. So if I'm if I'm an employee out in the field, I can, not only will I get a notification via email and in my inbox in the app, I can go in here and say, hey, show me anything that's assigned to me and let's review it. We can do this for things like equipment as well too. So if I'm a garage or maintenance, maybe I'm a mechanic or garage manager, show me anything that came from an equipment inspection form or equipment repair request, whatever that might be. And I have a working task list for me to review at any time here that I can work through. We can report on these. We can get nice, data points, leading indicator analysis, things along those lines. So there's certain things that we can do to check and review, make sure we're staying on top of tasks, and continuing as we go from here. But there's a ton that we can do from a forms perspective in SafetyHQ. I don't want to make this too sales pitchy, but if you want to see more information, again, fully customizable, we can get into what you need. But the point here, at least the 2 points that I wanted to cover on this point were, make sure that that process is simplified so that way they're only focusing on what they need. And B, we don't want to inundate or overload them with notifications or responsibilities. If all you're doing is filling out long forms that aren't relevant and sending notifications to everybody, that's a recipe for disaster and negligence from your employees as you go forward. So with that, I'll kind of move on to some other areas. Again, SafetyHQ has a full SDS library. We sort and we source these for you as needed. We have a library of almost 2 million records that you can review at any time, search and navigate in the field. So having your SDSs readily accessible for the team is important. Again, whether it's SafetyHQ or whether it's elsewhere, having them in a binder in a location that they can't access, frequently, they're going to get no participation. I've seen some people that maybe aren't ready for a SafetyHQ that are still doing things on paper. Every once in a while, they'll hide a $5 bill. I thought that was a funny example. They'll hide a $5 bill in the SDS sheet and say, hey, you know what, everyone go and review it. That thing never gets reviewed. It never gets updated. Any kind of incentive that you can to get them focusing on it, but more importantly, making it accessible to them should and if something happens is going to be key there. So we have it right on the phone, but there's a lot of different ways that you can do that as well. I'll kind of jump down since we kind of mentioned equipments from the forum perspective. There's a ton of things that we can do from an equipment perspective. This either is a huge focus of your safety program, or this could be an afterthought. It just really kind of depends on the trade and the type of work that you do. If you're doing a lot of service work, you're doing a lot of trucks out on the road, you got a lot of DOT inspections, what have you, this is pretty often, focused on. If you're doing big equipment that, you're renting for the most part, you're not inspecting on it, maybe not as much of a focus, but here at SafetyHQ, we consider making sure your equipment is regularly inspected or reviewed to be one of the most critical safety items that you can do. So from here, we can tag and review equipment by certain items. If you want to tag them for types of equipment, by manufacturer. Anytime you do an inspection or anything from the forms, this will update the inspected date on the equipment record itself. So you'll see here that, this is last inspected. It will automatically set both the last inspected date when you complete it and the next inspected date. We can tie things, we can tie this equipment to other equipment, to employees, to jobs. So I really see this getting tracked for a lot of ways for employees to continue tracking where the equipment is, what needs to be reviewed, what needs updated, and I can check in to see the history on that equipment at any point in time as well too. Another thing that I see this used for, again, maybe a little bit out of the scope of safety, but at least for equipment for those that do service work or warranty work and they need to check a piece of equipment that maybe they installed 6 months, 8 months, 12 months down the line, this is a great place to check and review where that's located at and the last time you reviewed it, all of those types of items as well too. I'm kind of bouncing around here, but this isn't necessarily a SafetyHQ demo. Again, if you are interested, I would be happy to give you guys one at any time. But making your documents readily available is another key in making the safety culture strong and balanced, right? A lot of people say, hey, this safety is really important to us. It's my first day I'm hired. You told me how important safety is. You gave me my PPE. I took maybe a little quiz or a lesson on that. Great. I see the safety manual and then I never see it again. Maybe that safety manual is on each job site. At SafetyHQ, we have a document section where we can host things like safety manuals. We can also do continued lessons to train and make sure the team's up to date on their safety manual, what have you. But it's one thing to have the team review it immediately. It's another to have this readily accessible for them as well too. So referencing that safety manual, really making it the backbone of your business and your safety culture is important because, again, maybe to the letter of the law, you have all these things written in the safety manual, but in the field or in each crew, it's practiced differently. That's going to set up a major red flag to the team. Then it's going to say, hey, well, if I don't need to pay attention to what it said in the safety manual, why do I need to pay attention to XYZ information from this toolbox talk too? So regularly reviewing this, whether that's annually, quarterly, what have you, making sure that these safety manuals up to date and keeping them in front of your team is a great way to show that, this is important to us. This is kind of the backbone of our business. And we do care about both you and the company's safety as well. So making that accessible along with any other documents, right? This goes with project-related documents. We have good places to put plans. On the job itself, you can store plans, you can store whatever the document might be, and make that readily accessible for the team as you go. The last two pieces that I'd like to kind of focus in on when we talk about building a safety culture, and again, I'm kind of using SafetyHQ as kind of the tutorial here, would be let's start with certifications and lessons, continuing education and research, right? This is one thing. If you don't do anything else from a safety perspective, the one thing that I do see people stay on top of is research and lessons. If you don't update those, that's like number one. If you say, hey, if they're not checking to see if any of my certifications are up to date, maybe your employees are better than others. We do have some folks, believe it or not, that their employees stay up to date on their certs. They check it regularly. They're on top of it. Others, not so much, kind of got to be reviewed as a whole. But that's where it all starts, right? If you say, making sure your certifications are up to date and they know that you're paying attention to these types of things, like as we reviewed before, they realize it's a priority. They realize it's important. And then when they go into that training, there's a renewed sense of focus. They'll definitely give you more attention because they know, even before they realize that it's expired, that it's expired and you put some value in getting them back out there. So as far as research, we can build lessons in here, maybe around your safety manual, around certain types of certifications and trainings. You can put videos in here. We have a whole bunch of pre-built lessons that we can share with you as well. Require your team to take a quiz after maybe watching some videos and reviewing this. Assign this out to employees like we did on the Toolbox Talks. And then we can track and manage that here in the certifications area. So this is maybe not so much something that the field sees on a day-to-day basis. You can allow them to access and review what certifications are expiring in the near future. So if I go to Bill, you can see Bill certifications. We can share this with a QR code. This is nice and handy too for certain types of certifications, especially if they forget their card out in the field. That's great. Hey, we have this on record. We're a professional and organized business. I can pull up my card at any time if I need to provide that to, the GC, OSHA, whoever it might be. Simplify the process for those that forget those items. You're showing your team that you have their back. But also, we can go ahead and track certifications a number of ways, right? If it's through a lesson, automatically set, the completed date and the expiration date. We can do these in bulk. We can go ahead and add these as a one-off. So if you have 25 people that went to a training, we can bulk upload those. Maybe one-off training, an employee came up to the job site and said, hey, I updated my drug screen. And if they don't have to go back into the office and share that with the headquarters group, that means they're working out in the field more, you're getting the information you need faster, and it's more convenient for them. So we realize that there's always a blend, right? You can't do all of your certifications and trainings in-house, although I know a lot of folks try to. Maybe you can, but most often we see a blend of consultants, third parties, training in-house. If you're union, maybe through the hall, what have you. So this really accommodates, especially in SafetyHQ, a blend of all of those entry points, which you don't get through maybe like an Excel sheet that's one person in the office manages. So the team's a lot more likely to update that information if they don't have to go through a whole bunch of hoops to share that they've updated a certification or what have you as well. Now in here too, the biggest piece is not letting a lot of these things expire, so we can be proactive. We can grab certifications by groups. We can grab it by a type of training. And then we've also recently added this new feature to send off automatic certification warnings, right? The worst thing that you can have is let something pass by without giving attention to detail. So from here, we can notify your team. You can break this up by crew, company, division to notify certain people. But monthly, you'll get a notification for as far out in advance as you want to look to notify you who's going to be expiring on what. So there's a lot of tools out there. Maybe it's not us, but I will say most of the folks we see coming along are on Excel. Maybe it's personnel files, things like that. Not the best, and maybe if it's managed by a few people, it's also not accessible for the team when they need to review this as well too. So at least one thing that we believe is important for building a safety culture is making that certification information accessible to the folks that need it wherever they might be at. It doesn't do you any good if it's all locked away in a filing cabinet. They can't see it. They don't know where it's at. They don't know when it needs to be updated. Accessible to the team that manages it, accessible to the team that it covers, and then the project managers or what have you that are focusing on this as well. And the last piece that I'll kind of touch on today, and before we get into some questions, and if you do have some questions, that's a great time to mention it. Feel free to add those into the chat. I see we've already got 2 or 3 coming as we go, but I'll touch on those as we go at the end. But this will be the last piece that we kind of touch on, will be incident reporting, right? Everybody does their incident reporting a little bit differently. This is one of the universal staples of, kind of a health and safety program as it is. Again, the biggest key that I can focus on here for developing a safety culture is for teams not to be fearful of incidents, accidents, near misses, what have you. If they know that that form is going to be a big issue, then you're going to be reluctant to document items that need to be documented. If it's a near miss and you show the team that it's a really good learning example, and we're not necessarily iron fist coming down on the group that was involved too heavily, and you show that, hey, you encourage everyone to report these so that we can all get better as a group, that's when we really see some improved processes and buy-in to the safety program as you continue as well too. So the way we believe it on the incident reporting perspective is we only want the folks that are involved to be notified, right? We don't necessarily want this part to be accessible to everyone. We can keep this focused in on just the employees that need access. Great. And just like everything else, if I add a new incident report here, maybe it's only going to focus on the details that maybe the crew out in the team needs, or the crew out in the field needs. This is something we also do everywhere in SafetyHQ. We can limit access based on project, job, what have you. Again, let's keep the team focused on what they need. They don't need to be, nosing around in other areas that aren't relevant to them. But once they fill out just the information that they need, automatic notification goes off to the interested parties. And from there, that next person in line, after they've been notified, they have all the information that the field started, and they can go ahead, track days away from work, incidents, root cause analysis, witness statements, all of that. And then what we believe is maybe the most important item regarding incident tracking is reviewing this, right? If this means nothing, if this goes in a binder and you don't review those details at all, it doesn't do you a lot of good. So take this time, whether it be near misses, actual incidents, recordables, what have you. Review this with the team. Keep your thumb on the pulse of different trends that you might be noticing, because if you notice a lot of near misses, maybe you can prevent an injury or an incident that is to come in the future by reviewing some easy and accessible reporting options, kind of similar to what we have here. So if you're not using a SafetyHQ, what we feel is the most important when it comes to incident reporting is keep the teams involved. It's going to be a stressful moment as it is. Keep them focused on just the pieces and parts that are relevant to them. Manage the flow of information, the routing automatically. Again, this is a stressful time. Nobody wants to be involved for an incident or accident write-up. Guide them through the form. Again, we can do that a lot of ways, like go to like this accident report. If we inundate them with information, they got 1,000 things to look at. They're not going to know what to pick. Maybe I'm in a vehicle accident, I pick vehicle, now it's going to ask them some specific vehicle related questions. Other vehicles are involved, yes, great, I grab that information. We're keeping the team focused on what's important, what's relevant to them during a lot of these stressful and anxiety filled times. So the more that you can take out of their hands and the more that you can automate from a routing information fill perspective, the better information you're going to get back, the better information you're going to have from a data perspective so that you can make appropriate decisions and be proactive. And then as a whole, the more information you're going to have to protect yourself, the business, and whatever it might be from there as well too. So just a few key items that we like to point out when we talk about kind of building a safety culture, just from our experience dealing with this for a number of years now, and different insights into different businesses. So with that, I know we got a few questions here. I know I don't know if this was scheduled for a half hour or an hour, but I'll touch on a few of these really quickly. If you have any, now is the time to get them in. But I see a handful now, and I'll get to at least a few just to get us started. But if you do have any questions and you're interested in sharing or getting maybe a personalized demo, we can show you that soon. So I'll pull up maybe my information here in case you want to review this. Let's go ahead. Give me one moment here, and we are back up on the screen. So I don't know. Not sure which screen you guys are seeing. Maybe it's one, maybe it's the other, but it's got what you need. So we're not gonna overthink it too much as you go. So again, question number one. Let's go with this. My team is not always not doing. I got a couple of pieces. Give me a sec. The gist of this question that I get from Kelly here says that you're not getting a lot of participation from Toolbox Talks. They're looking for information on where to get Toolbox Talk information and how to share it with their teams. Kelly, if I missed that, I know kind of as we're typing here, it could be a little bit goofy. So if you need me to clarify this question further, let me know. But that's a great question. We get that all the time. Some really good places to get Toolbox Talk topics or information, right? Obviously, if you have something like SafetyHQ, that's a fantastic place to start. We have a lot of tools and like I said, over 200 Toolbox Talks that we can focus on just for construction for you. Another good place to check that we find a lot of our clients have a lot of success is your insurance provider. Maybe it's a trade organization that you belong to locally, regionally, or nationally. Those are all really good resources for Toolbox Talks aside from what we can. You can never have too much information, right? Finding relevant information, using a near miss or an accident as an opportunity to build a Toolbox Talk is fantastic. We see that all the time. A near miss becomes a case study that you can use for years and years to keep the team focused, and it makes it relevant. Their ears perk up when they either realize that it happened to this company, maybe if you want to use their names, a particular employee that they're familiar with, or a project that they're familiar with from there too. So those are all really good places to get them. How you communicate that out to your team, again, I'm biased, but I would suggest something like SafetyHQ. That's a fantastic tool to check and review how it's been done. Outside of that, the most common thing I see is either email or paper. Handling that information, collecting that, staying on top of who's done what and when. You're kind of always in arrears, so you're never quite on top of that and keeping that relevant and up-to-date information for the employees. But those would be some additional options for you outside of something maybe like a SafetyHQ, which again might be the preferred solution. I have another question here. Can each employee access this as needed? I'll kind of go in a different direction for SafetyHQ without getting into too much detail. SafetyHQ is a company license. It's not by individual, so you can have as many or as few people accessing the software as you'd like. If you want them to only see particular aspects, like you want them to see their certifications and you want them to see, just projects that they're working on, great. You can limit that access. Maybe you don't want people to see incident reporting, not a problem. But if you want them to see, safety manuals, things like that, whatever, this is a great place to make a central hub for all of your employees access as you need and as you'd like as well too. So good question. My team, let's see here. My team, okay, so the gist of this question from Jared, and again, Jared, I'm kind of fill in some gaps here, so if I'm wrong, let me know. But what Jared's asking here is, based on the employees that he has, some people are filling out JHAs really well, some people are filling them out really poorly, what have you. I've seen this go a couple of different ways. Again, simplifying the form is a great way to start. So if you know what form you need, or if you know what works well, or if it gets the information you need, start with simplifying the form. You'll be surprised how far that's going to take you in getting, good feedback or good results on those forms as you go. Obviously, follow-up is key as well too. You know what, if they're not going to give you good information back, if you're never going to follow up and reference that form going forward, kind of why would they? It's like doing homework that is not going to be graded, right? This is probably somewhere along those lines. But we do, again, I think the best tool that we've seen is, like, especially with SafetyHQ, the logic, right? Based on the questions that I'm answering or the results that I'm putting in, it's only asking me relevant questions. I think that's a good place to start, but I think showcasing, your safety stars or whatever you might want to call it, is really good too. You want to do it in if it's an incentive program or what have you, but show how the nice ones are done. Not everybody has a really, concrete way of doing things. You might be surprised. You hire somebody with a lot of construction experience and they've done a lot of these JHAs or whatever form you might have them filling out, and they do them differently because of their employment background or maybe because of who they used to work for or what crew they were on. Great. Keeping that as centralized and similar as you can by showing those examples and kind of praising that that positive work is really, really valuable as well too. And I think I'll go to one more question here. I got 4 or 5 that I know I haven't gotten to yet, so I apologize for Devin and Polly and Maggie. Please send me those. I got my information up on the screen. Feel free to send me an email. We can get into some further depth. A lot of those are kind of getting into SafetyHQ in particular, which I'd be happy to show you in kind of a personalized demo at any time if you'd like to. So, but for this last question is, how can I prepare for an OSHA review? And that's a tough one. I don't know that I have a great answer for you at all times. Depending on your trade, you could be, I know a lot of folks that we have that work in trenching or ditch work. Anytime OSHA is driving up and down the highway and they see an open hole, they're coming to inspect and pop by. So I think being proactive and being prepared in advance is the best thing you can do. Based on the language of this question, how I read it, it sounds like there might have been an incident or an accident, and you kind of got to brace yourself for some further, some further inquiry. Having that documentation goes a long way, whether it's, again, through SafetyHQ or another solution. Organized, accessible, shows you everything you need. You'll be surprised how much easier these your OSHA review, inspection, whatever it might be, audit might go if you can provide that information to them readily and accessibly. You know what? And then that shows that you're on top of your game, you're ready to provide it as you need it. And we've noticed a lot less folks kind of getting really dragged over the coals when they're prepared, and they show that they take these things seriously as well too. So that's a great question. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. For those questions I didn't get to, again, feel free to send them my way. I would love to review those with you as you go. And then if you would like to, if you'd like to share or go through an individualized demo, my name's Eric. My email's on the screen. Give me a call. Give me an email. Heck, right after this if you want. We can set up some time, whatever might be most convenient for you. But thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope some of this was helpful. Again, I know every safety program is different. Some things work differently for each crew or organization. But happy to talk about this, even if you're a current client, not interested in being a client, what have you. Let's just talk safety. Let's talk how we can improve that process for you and your team. But thanks again for the time, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope your holidays were great, and hope to talk to you soon. Thank you and take care.